Marcus Williams was 42 years old when he woke up from a coma and realized his wife had been waiting for him to die. He was a construction company owner, self-made, built his business from nothing after his father's death left him responsible for his family at 19. For 5 years, he believed Vanessa loved him for who he was, not what he had. That night in the ICU, his body paralyzed by medication, but his mind perfectly clear, Marcus heard his wife lean close and whisper the words that would destroy her. Finally, 3 more days until you're legally dead, and everything you've built becomes mine. She had no idea he could hear every word, no idea that the quiet, blue-collar man she'd underestimated was already planning her destruction from that hospital bed. What Marcus discovered in the days that followed, about Vanessa, about his business partner, about the life he thought he knew, would lead to a reckoning that neither of them saw coming. And it all started with that whisper in the dark. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Through the morning haze of downtown Charlotte, Marcus Williams stood on the 23rd floor of his latest project, watching his crew secure steel beams with practiced precision. The spring breeze carried the familiar sense of concrete dust and metal, reminding him of days spent learning at his father's side. "Check those load-bearing connections twice," he called out to the welding team. "Better to spend an extra minute now than deal with problems later." The workers nodded respectfully. They knew Marcus wasn't just barking orders. He'd done every job on site himself over the years. His hands still carried calluses from the work that had built Williams Construction from the ground up. 23 years ago, when his father's heart attack left 19-year-old Marcus responsible for his younger siblings, everyone expected him to fail. But they hadn't understood that working construction had taught him more than just physical skills. Every building started with careful planning, attention to detail, and the patience to do things right. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Don't forget dinner with Derek and Julie tonight. Love you." Marcus smiled, though something in his chest tightened slightly. 5 years of marriage, and sometimes he still couldn't believe Vanessa had chosen him. She'd walked away from her 6-figure pharmaceutical sales career, saying she was tired of corporate fakery and wanted something real. "Hey, boss!" Derek Thompson's voice carried across the skeletal floor as his business partner and best friend of 8 years emerged from the service elevator. "Inspection time?" "Right on schedule," Marcus replied, greeting Derek with their usual fist bump. "How are those material costs looking?" "Don't worry about it. I'm handling everything." Derek grinned, adjusting his hard hat. "You focus on keeping us ahead of deadline." They began their final safety walk-through, Marcus noting every detail in his mental checklist. The scaffolding needed checking. Something about the setup caught his eye. He stepped closer to examine the bolts. "Careful there," Derek called out, but Marcus was already moving onto the platform. The first warning was a subtle vibration under his feet. Then came the metallic shriek of shearing bolts. Marcus had a split second to register that the safety cables were frayed before the world tilted sideways. Time slowed. He saw Derek's face, mouth open in a shout, heard his crew's panicked yells. The ground rushed up through 23 stories of open air. Impact, darkness, fragments of consciousness, sirens, voices, the rattling of a gurney, someone saying his name. Vanessa's perfume as she leaned over him, her voice breaking perfectly. "Baby, please hold on." More darkness, beeping machines, medical terms floating past, severe trauma, swelling, medically induced coma, minimum 3 days. "Mrs. Williams," a doctor's voice cut through the fog. "We've stabilized him, but the next 72 hours are critical. We'll keep him sedated to allow his brain time to heal." "I understand." Vanessa's voice trembled just right. "His family, his sister and brother, they're in the waiting room. We can allow brief visits once he's settled in ICU. Footsteps. Shanice's familiar perfume. Her lawyer's precision, even in grief. What exactly happened? Was there an equipment failure? Jerome's quieter presence. I'll check the safety logs, review the inspection records. Please, Vanessa interrupted. Not now. Let's just pray he pulls through. More darkness, the steady rhythm of machines, night settling over the hospital, footsteps retreating as visiting hours ended. Then, in the empty ICU room, the soft click of a closing door, the whisper of expensive fabric as Vanessa sat beside his bed. A pause as she checked to ensure they were alone. The brush of her hair against his face as she leaned close to his ear. Her breath warm, but her words ice cold. Stopping here as per instructions, just before Vanessa's revelation. The scene has established Marcus's character, his relationship with Vanessa and Derek, and built to the accident and hospital sequence, ending with Vanessa alone in his room about to speak. The soft click of the door closing echoed in the dim hospital room. Vanessa's designer heels whispered across the linoleum as she settled into the chair beside Marcus's bed. For a long moment, there was only the steady beeping of monitors and the hiss of oxygen. Then she leaned close, her expensive perfume filling his nostrils. Her lips brushed his ear, and the warmth of her breath carried words that shattered his world. Finally, she whispered, voice rich with satisfaction. 3 more days until you're legally dead, and everything you've built becomes mine. She traced a finger down his cheek, the gentle touch making his skin crawl. You made it so easy, Marcus. So pathetically easy. Marcus's mind reeled, but years of working dangerous construction sites had taught him the value of stillness. He kept his breathing steady, his face slack, while inside his thoughts raced like trapped birds. I almost can't believe how perfect this is, Vanessa continued, settling back in her chair. I was starting to worry I'd have to arrange something myself. But then, scaffolding collapse. It couldn't be better if I'd planned it. She laughed softly. Though I have to admit, watching you build that little empire of yours, being so careful, so methodical, God, it was boring. Playing the adoring wife who just wanted something real and authentic. I deserve an Oscar for that performance. Every word hit Marcus like a physical blow, but he remained motionless. The doctors had explained to everyone that coma patients could often hear, that family should speak to them, but Vanessa had been too busy making calls to listen. Or maybe she just hadn't cared. Her phone buzzed. She stood, heels clicking toward the door. Through the opening, Marcus heard her voice drop to a sultry purr. Hey, baby. No, I'm alone with him. The doctors say we'll need to make some difficult decisions soon. I know. It's so hard. Her voice dripped with fake emotion. But we knew this might happen. Yes, everything's in place. The insurance, the business. Don't worry. By this time next week, it'll all be ours. Marcus focused on keeping his breathing steady as rage and betrayal threatened to overwhelm him. He wanted to scream, to confront her, but the combination of medication and swelling left him trapped in his own body. Besides, years of construction work had taught him that acting without proper assessment got people killed. Vanessa returned, humming softly. She adjusted his pillow with disturbing gentleness, like a spider tending to wrapped prey. Sweet dreams, darling, she whispered, pressing a kiss to his forehead. Just 3 more days, and everything you worked so hard for will have a new owner. Her fingertips traced his jaw. You know, in a way, I did love you, like you'd love a lottery ticket that hits the jackpot. The door clicked shut behind her. In the darkness, Marcus lay perfectly still, methodically testing each muscle, each finger. His body felt weighted with lead, but after hours of concentrated effort, he managed to twitch his right index finger slightly. It wasn't much, but it was something, a start, a foundation to build on. Through the long night, He cataloged what he knew. Vanessa had never loved him. She had a partner in this scheme. She was waiting for him to be declared brain dead. She had plans for his business, his insurance, everything he'd built. He had roughly 48 hours before she expected to collect her prize. The first rays of dawn filtered through the hospital blinds as the morning shift began their rounds. Vanessa arrived right on cue, carrying coffee and looking perfectly put together in her designer clothes. Every inch the devoted wife. She greeted the medical team with just the right mix of hope and worry. "Any changes?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly as the doctor examined Marcus's vital signs. "Still stable," the doctor replied. "We'll continue monitoring and begin reducing sedation gradually over the next 48 hours. Marcus kept his face slack, his body still, as Vanessa's hand found his. Her fingers were warm, but all he felt was ice. "I'm here, baby," she said for the benefit of the medical team. "I'm not going anywhere." For once, Marcus knew she was telling the absolute truth. She wouldn't leave, not until she was sure he was dead. The morning sun cast harsh fluorescent shadows across the ICU room as Vanessa cornered Marcus's lead physician near the nurse's station. Her designer suit and perfect makeup created a stark contrast against the sterile hospital environment. "Dr. Chen, I need to understand what we're facing," Vanessa said, her voice carefully modulated to convey concern. "When do we need to start thinking about difficult decisions?" "Dr." Chen glanced at her tablet. "Mrs. Williams, your husband's condition is stable. While the coma was medically induced to reduce swelling, we'll begin—" "But what about brain death protocols?" Vanessa interrupted, her fingers tightening on her leather handbag. "I've been researching, and after 72 hours, from his bed, Marcus listened intently, keeping his breathing measured and steady. Every word felt like another nail in the coffin she was building for him. "That's a premature concern," Dr. Chen replied firmly. "We have clear signs of brain activity." Vanessa's heels clicked against the floor as she shifted stance. "But if there's no improvement by tomorrow—" "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Dr. Chen said, closing her tablet. "Focus on positive thoughts, Mrs. Williams." After the doctor left, Vanessa pulled out her phone, moving to the far corner of the room. Marcus strained to hear, maintaining his facade of unconsciousness. "Baby?" Her voice dropped to an intimate whisper that made Marcus's stomach turn. "No, the doctors are being frustratingly optimistic." I know, but we need to be patient. The company can't survive much longer with what you've set up." Marcus felt his heart stutter. He knew that voice on the other end of the call. Derek Thompson, his business partner of 8 years, the man who'd helped him build his company from the ground up. "The false vendor accounts are perfect," Derek continued, his voice carrying faintly through the phone. "Nobody's noticed the overcharges. Between that and the diverted contracts, it looks like the company's bleeding money. Once he's gone, nobody will question me stepping in to save it." "You're brilliant," Vanessa purred. "I knew you were the perfect partner the moment I saw you at that company barbecue. Marcus never suspected a thing about us." 2 years of sneaking around," Derek chuckled. "Worth every second. Speaking of which, when can you get away tonight? The usual place?" Marcus lay there, absorbing the magnitude of the betrayal. His wife and his best friend had been systematically destroying everything he'd built for 2 years. Every Sunday dinner, every business meeting, every moment of supposed friendship. All lies. Later that afternoon, a young nurse checked Marcus's vitals while making small talk with Vanessa. "I was reviewing the paperwork," the nurse said cheerfully. $3 million is quite a life insurance policy. Your husband must have really loved you to increase it so much just last year." Marcus felt Vanessa's presence shift beside him. "Yes," she replied smoothly. Marcus was always thinking ahead. After the nurse left, Vanessa muttered under her breath, "Love had nothing to do with it. I filled out the paperwork myself." The second revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. She'd forged his signature, inflated his life insurance without his knowledge. The pieces were falling into place. The accident, the company's manufactured financial troubles, the insurance policy. They'd created the perfect trap. By the next day, feeling had begun returning to Marcus's extremities. When alone, he carefully tested his fingers, managing small movements. During Vanessa's brief absence for a lunch meeting with Derek, Shanice visited. Marcus concentrated all his strength into his right hand as his sister held it. He squeezed, just slightly, but enough. Shanice's sharp intake of breath was barely audible. Marcus's eyes met hers, and he blinked deliberately, willing her to understand. Her lawyer's instincts kicked in immediately as he mouthed the words, "Get Jerome, lawyer. Trust no one." She squeezed his hand back once, then quickly composed herself. "Oh, I just remembered an emergency brief due tomorrow," she announced to the empty room. "I'll come back later, Marcus." That evening, lying alone in his room, Marcus methodically tested his returning mobility. Small finger movement, toe flexing, subtle muscle control. He practiced when the night shift made their rounds, ensuring his movements weren't visible to the staff, who might inadvertently alert Vanessa. The next morning, as sunlight began filtering through the blinds, Marcus waited until Vanessa was standing beside his bed, checking her phone. Then, deliberately, he moved his hand. Her phone clattered to the floor as their eyes met. He watched the emotions flash across her face. Shock, fear, calculation, before she screamed for the nurses, instantly transforming into the overjoyed wife. But in that unguarded moment, before her mask slipped back into place, Marcus had seen everything he needed to see. The medical team rushed into Marcus's room, responding to Vanessa's excited calls. Dr. Chen led the group, immediately beginning a neurological assessment, while nurses checked his vitals. Marcus deliberately kept his movements weak and uncoordinated, his eyes unfocused. "Mr. Williams, can you hear me?" Dr. Chen asked, shining a penlight across his eyes. Marcus slurred his response, making it barely intelligible. "Yeah." "Where?" "You're in the hospital," Dr. Chen explained patiently. "You've been in a coma for 3 days following a construction accident. Can you tell me your full name?" Marcus paused longer than necessary, blinking slowly. Marcus. Williams? He made it sound like a question, watching Vanessa's relieved smile from the corner of his eye. She touched his arm gently, her fingers cold against his skin. "That's right, baby," she cooed. "You're doing so well." The medical team conducted a series of basic cognitive tests. Marcus carefully failed most of them, counting backward from 20, but stumbling after 16, identifying simple shapes, but claiming a triangle was a square, showing confusion about the current president. All the while, his mind remained sharp, recording every reaction, every exchanged glance. This level of confusion is normal after a coma, Dr. Chen assured Vanessa. The fact that he's responsive at all is remarkable. We'll need to run more comprehensive tests. Throughout the day, various specialists cycled through his room. Speech therapists, neurologists, physical therapists, each one expressing surprise at his rapid physical recovery, while noting concern about his apparent cognitive delays. Marcus maintained his performance, trembling when trying to hold a cup, fumbling with simple tasks. Vanessa rarely left his side, intercepting questions and controlling the flow of information. When nurses mentioned calling family, she quickly intervened. "Let's wait until he's more stable," she suggested smoothly. "Too many visitors might overwhelm him right now. He needs rest and quiet." As evening approached, the hospital settled into its night routine. Vanessa had just finished speaking with the night nurse about Marcus's medication schedule when he spoke up, his voice weak but clear enough to be heard. Vanessa? Can we talk? Alone?" She smiled warmly at the nurse. "Of course, baby." Could you give us a moment? The nurse nodded and left, closing the door behind her. Vanessa settled into the chair beside Marcus's bed, reaching for his hand. He waited until her fingers touched his before speaking again. This time, in his normal voice, clear and steady. I heard everything, Vanessa. Every single word. The transformation was instant. Her warm smile vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. Her fingers withdrew from his hand as she straightened in her chair, assessing him with predatory focus. Prove it, she said quietly, her voice carrying none of its previous tenderness. You're recovering from a traumatic brain injury. You're on heavy medications. Her lips curved into a cruel smile. You're confused, disoriented. That's what everyone will believe. She stood slowly, smoothing her designer dress with manicured hands. Leaning close to his face, she dropped her voice to a whisper. And if you keep recovering, well, accidents happen, especially to construction workers. Her breath was warm against his ear. You're not the first, Marcus, and you won't be the last. Marcus kept his face neutral, watching as she straightened up and collected her purse. She walked to the door with unhurried confidence, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. Before leaving, she turned back with a perfect impression of wifely concern. Get some rest, baby. I'll be back first thing tomorrow. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Through the window, Marcus could see her face, still wearing that cold, calculating expression, before she remembered to adjust her mask for the nurse's station. He knew Jerome would find that security footage, capturing the moment her true nature showed through. Waiting until he was certain she had left the floor, Marcus carefully reached for his phone on the bedside table. Vanessa had left it there, assuming his confusion was real, never imagining he could operate it. His fingers moved swiftly across the screen as he composed a text to both Jerome and Shanice. Code red. She threatened me. Gather the team. Tomorrow. Shanice arrived early the next morning, her professional briefcase contrasting with her casual visitor's attire. She paused at the nurse's station, playing the part of the concerned sister perfectly. How's he doing today? She asked, her voice carrying just the right amount of worry. Much more alert, the nurse replied, though still quite confused. Mrs. Williams just left to get breakfast. Perfect timing. Shanice nodded gratefully and headed to Marcus's room. Once inside, she closed the door and pulled the visitor's chair close to his bed, positioning her briefcase on her lap. To anyone watching through the window, she appeared to be sharing family photos from the folder she withdrew. Instead, she activated a small digital recorder hidden between the papers. Tell me everything, she whispered, maintaining a gentle smile for anyone passing by. Start from the moment you first became conscious. Marcus kept his voice low but clear, recounting every detail while appearing to react to fictional family photos. He described Vanessa's whispered confession, her cold satisfaction at counting down the days until his death, the revelation of her affair with Derek, the insurance policy, he murmured. A nurse mentioned it. $3 million. Vanessa admitted to forging my signature. Shanice's hands tightened on the folder, but her face remained carefully composed. I never trusted her, she said softly. Something always felt rehearsed. She began outlining their strategy, speaking between pretend reminiscences about old photographs. I'm requesting all medical records and visitor logs first thing. The insurance policy changes will need careful investigation. We'll need to prove the forgery. Marcus nodded slightly, then added, She's planning something legal. I heard her mention paperwork. Already found it, Shanice confirmed. She filed preliminary conservatorship documents yesterday, claiming your cognitive issues require her to take control of your medical and financial decisions. They continued reviewing details until Shanice's phone buzzed. Jerome's warning that Vanessa was returning. Shanice smoothly transitioned to actual family photos as footsteps approached. An hour later, Jerome arrived carrying a laptop bag and several magazines. "Thought you might want some entertainment, big brother," he announced cheerfully as Vanessa looked on. Once Vanessa left for a work call, Jerome's fingers flew across the keyboard. To anyone passing, he appeared to be showing Marcus funny videos. In reality, he was accessing the construction company's financial records, installing monitoring software, and running deep background checks. "Derek's been busy," Jerome muttered, eyes scanning spreadsheets. "Created at least 6 fake vendor accounts. Been billing the company for non-existent work." His jaw tightened. Total so far, $427,000 in fraudulent charges. Started exactly 6 months after meeting Vanessa at that company barbecue. Marcus absorbed this, keeping his face neutral. "What about her?" Jerome's typing intensified. "That's where it gets interesting. Vanessa Cooper doesn't exist before 6 years ago. But Vanessa Richardson." He turned the screen slightly. Marcus stared at the photo of a familiar face with different hair, different makeup, but unmistakably Vanessa. The article headline read, "Atlanta Developer's Death Raises Questions." Kenneth Richardson, Jerome explained quietly, successful real estate developer. Died in a boating accident 5 years ago. During cancer treatment, he changed his will, increased his life insurance, paid out $1.8 million to his new wife, Vanessa. His family contested, claimed she manipulated him while he was vulnerable. Couldn't prove it. She disappeared with the money. Marcus studied Kenneth Richardson's smiling face in the obituary photo. Successful self-made businessman. No obvious signs of vulnerability. Just like Marcus, except Kenneth hadn't survived to fight back. "There's more," Jerome added, pulling up additional files. "Similar pattern in Florida 7 years ago. Different name, but same face. Wealthy contractor. Suspicious accident. Insurance payout. She's perfected this." Marcus felt cold realization settle in his chest. He wasn't a random target. He wasn't even her first choice. He was her type. Self-made, successful, trusting. A perfect mark for a practiced predator. His eyes remained fixed on Kenneth Richardson's photo. The man looked strong, capable, completely unaware he was smiling next to his future killer. "I'm not the first," Marcus said quietly. "I won't be the last, unless I stop her." Pat Henderson stood in the hospital doorway, a vibrant arrangement of flowers masking her sharp, assessing gaze. She'd known Marcus since he was 12, watched him grow from his father's shadow-following son to a man who'd built something remarkable. Now, seeing him lying there, her heart clenched, but there was steel in her spine. "Those construction boys of yours sent these," she said loudly for the benefit of anyone passing. "They miss their boss, something fierce." Once the door closed, her gentle demeanor shifted to business-like efficiency. She'd worked with Marcus's father for 15 years before his death, then stayed to help 19-year-old Marcus keep the company alive. She knew every detail of the business, every contract, every vendor relationship. "Tell me everything," she said quietly, setting the flowers aside. Marcus spoke in low tones, sharing the betrayals he'd uncovered. Pat's face hardened with each revelation. When he finished, she nodded once, decisively. "That explains the irregularities I've been noticing," she said. "Derek's been pushing paperwork through faster than usual, claiming it's to help while you're here." Her lips tightened. "I'll find every penny he's stolen." Over the next 5 days, Pat became Marcus's eyes and ears at the office. She arrived early each morning, reviewing years of financial records with new scrutiny. She traced vendor payments, cross-referenced contracts, and carefully documented everything she found. The evidence mounted quickly. 3 years ago, Derek had begun creating false vendor accounts shortly after meeting Vanessa at the company summer barbecue. Small charges at first, testing the waters. Then larger amounts as his confidence grew. Pat found copies of checks with forged signatures, inflated material costs, and phantom labor charges. He's been bleeding the company slowly, Pat reported during another flower delivery, making it look like normal business struggles, but it adds up, over $400,000 so far. She discovered emails between Derek and various contractors subtly undermining Marcus's reputation, suggesting the company was in trouble, that Marcus was losing his grip, positioning Derek as the reasonable voice of stability. "They're setting it up," Pat explained, "making it look like the company needs saving. Derek's been telling people you've been distracted, making bad decisions. When Vanessa sells your shares after your death, Derek will swoop in as the hero who saves everyone's jobs." Marcus maintained his performance of weakness, letting his hands shake when holding water cups, slurring words when doctors visited, appearing emotionally fragile and confused. Vanessa bought it completely, growing more confident with each display of his vulnerability. Jerome visited daily, ostensibly helping Marcus with entertainment and communication. In reality, he was installing surveillance software and monitoring communications. His most crucial addition was a sophisticated recording app on Marcus's phone. The recordings proved devastating. One evening, thinking Marcus was sleeping, Vanessa spoke to Derek in the hallway just outside his room. "He's still not signing the power of attorney," she said, frustration evident. "We need to move faster." "What if he keeps refusing?" Derek asked. "Then we help him along," Vanessa replied coldly. "Brain injury patients have accidents all the time. A fall, a medication error. Who would question it? Especially with his history of confusion since the accident." "You're sure about this?" Derek sounded nervous. "I've done this before, baby. Trust me." The recording captured every word. Conspiracy to commit murder, clear as day. By the end of the second week, Marcus had assembled an ironclad case. Pat's financial investigation provided proof of years of systematic fraud. Jerome's technical expertise uncovered Vanessa's previous identities and suspicious history. The hospital security footage showed her mask dropping when she thought no one was watching. The recordings captured her threats and plans. Most importantly, they had witnesses: doctors, nurses, Pat, even some of Derek's own contractors, all ready to testify about suspicious patterns and concerning statements. Marcus kept playing weak, letting Vanessa and Derek believe they were closing in on victory. He watched them grow bolder, more careless, more revealing with each passing day. They never suspected that every word, every action, every plan was being meticulously documented and added to the evidence pile. During Pat's final visit that week, she placed fresh flowers beside his bed and squeezed his hand. "Everything's ready at the office," she whispered. "Every document, every record, every proof of what they've done. You just say the word." Marcus nodded slightly, then picked up his phone. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately, as he typed a message to his team. "Everything's ready. Now we wait for her next move." 3 weeks into Marcus's hospital stay, Vanessa's perfectly manicured hand pushed open the door. Behind her confident stride came Derek Thompson, his business partner's familiar bulk filling the doorframe. The fluorescent lights caught the sheen of nervous sweat on Derek's forehead, despite his attempted casual demeanor. "Look who came to visit, baby," Vanessa announced brightly. "Derek's been so worried about you." Marcus kept his movements deliberately slow and shaky as he adjusted himself in the bed. He'd perfected the art of appearing weak, slightly unfocused eyes, occasional tremors in his hands, voice pitched just uncertain enough to concern, without alarming. "Hey, buddy," Derek said, settling into the chair beside the bed. He placed a thick manila envelope on the bedside table. "Brought some papers we need to talk about. Just temporary stuff, you know, to help keep things running smooth while you recover." Vanessa perched on the edge of Marcus's bed, her hand resting on his leg in what appeared caring but felt possessive. "The doctors say you're doing so much better, honey, but you need time to heal completely. We just want to make sure everything's taken care of while you focus on getting stronger." Marcus watched them perform their little drama. the concerned wife, the loyal friend. He noted how Derek's eyes kept darting to Vanessa for reassurance, how her fingers tightened slightly on his leg, whenever he took too long to respond. "What? What kind of papers?" Marcus asked, adding a slight slur to his words. Derek pulled documents from the envelope, spreading them on the rolling hospital table. "Just temporary power of attorney, medical and financial, so Vanessa can make decisions about your care, and I can keep the business running smoothly. You know I'll take good care of everything, just like you would." Marcus made a show of squinting at the papers, his hand trembling as he reached for them. There's a lot here. "Don't strain yourself, baby," Vanessa soothed, shooting Derek a quick look. "We can go through it slowly. The important thing is making sure you're protected while you recover." "Protected," Marcus repeated, letting the word hang in the air. Derek leaned forward, his voice taking on what he probably thought was a reassuring tone. "Listen, buddy, you know I've got your back. 20 years of friendship, right? Let us handle the stress so you can focus on getting better." Marcus looked between them, seeing the barely concealed eagerness in their eyes. This was their endgame, getting legal control over both his life and his company. Once these papers were signed, they'd have everything they needed to finish what the scaffold collapse had started. I don't know," Marcus said, making his voice weak and confused. "My head still feels foggy. Maybe tomorrow." The flash of frustration across Vanessa's face disappeared so quickly most people would have missed it. But Marcus had spent 5 years studying her expressions, learning to read the truth behind her masks. "Of course, honey," she said smoothly, gathering the papers. "No rush. We want you comfortable with everything. Take all the time you need, man," Derek added, standing up. "I'll keep things running at the office. Don't worry about a thing." They left, satisfied, confident their prey was within reach. As soon as they were gone, Marcus pressed the call button Jerome had modified, a signal that triggered an alert on his brother's phone. Within 15 minutes, Jerome slipped into the room, laptop under his arm. "Got something you need to see?" he said quietly, setting up the computer. Managed to recover some deleted texts between them. Marcus read through the messages, his jaw tightening. The exchanges were explicit, Vanessa and Derek discussing whether they needed to help Marcus along if he proved resistant to signing. Vanessa's clinical discussion of how easily brain injury patients could have accidents. Derek's nervous but willing responses. Later that afternoon, Marcus's doctor announced he was ready for discharge, pending outpatient physical therapy. Vanessa immediately launched into preparations, talking about making the house comfortable, scheduling home care visits. "I'll stop by regularly," Derek promised. "Help keep you updated on the business. No pressure about those papers. Whenever you're ready." That night, after Vanessa left to prepare the house, Marcus's team assembled in his hospital room. Shanice with her legal pad, Jerome with his laptop, Pat with her meticulous notes. They spent hours reviewing every detail of their counter-strategy, coordinating with the detectives who'd been building their case from the evidence they'd gathered. "Everything's in position," Shanice confirmed, reviewing her checklist. "The warrants are ready. We just need your signal once you're home." "She thinks she's taking me home to finish this," Marcus said, his voice strong and clear. "She has no idea she's walking into her own trap." The next morning, Marcus signed his discharge papers with exaggerated care, maintaining his performance of weakness. Vanessa beamed at the nurses as she wheeled him toward the exit. Derek waited in the parking lot, waving as they approached. "Just a few more days, baby," Vanessa whispered, her hand squeezing his shoulder. Marcus smiled up at her. "Just a few more days." Marcus gripped the wheelchair's armrests as Vanessa pushed him through their front door. Their 2-story craftsman home, once his sanctuary, now felt like enemy territory. Every familiar sight carried new shadows. The family photos on the walls were performances. The comfortable furniture held hidden dangers. Even the afternoon light through the windows seemed darker. "Home, sweet home," Vanessa chirped, wheeling him into the living room. "I've set everything up perfectly, baby. The guest room downstairs is all ready, so you won't have to deal with stairs." Marcus noted how she'd rearranged things. His favorite reading chair moved away from the window, the side table with the family phone now closer to her preferred spot on the couch. Small changes that gave her better control of the space. "Thank you," he mumbled, maintaining his weak, slightly confused demeanor. "I'm tired." "Of course you are, sweetheart." Vanessa's hand squeezed his shoulder. "Let's get you settled." The next 48 hours became an elaborate dance of deception. Vanessa played the perfect caregiver, helping him to bed, bringing carefully prepared meals, managing his medication schedule. Marcus palmed every pill she gave him, disposing of them when she wasn't looking. He'd learned from Jerome's research that several common medications could become lethal in combination. He trusted nothing from her hands now. Derek visited frequently, his concerned friend act almost convincing, except for the eager gleam in his eyes whenever business matters came up. Each time, Marcus would appear to struggle with concentration, claiming fatigue or confusion when pressed about signing documents. "No rush, buddy," Derek would say, exchanging meaningful glances with Vanessa. "We've got everything under control." Through it all, Marcus observed. He noticed how Vanessa's phone never left her hand, constantly buzzing with messages. Jerome's monitoring confirmed she and Derek texted constantly, growing increasingly impatient about the delay in getting Marcus's signature on their papers. Their messages became more urgent, more explicit about their timeline. On the second evening, Marcus overheard Vanessa in the kitchen, speaking quietly on the phone. "He's still resistant. Maybe we need to adjust his pain medication, help him think more clearly about what's best for everyone." Marcus recognized the threat in her words. The next morning, he made his move. "I've been thinking," he told Vanessa over breakfast, his voice deliberately weak. "Maybe we should have that business meeting today. Get everything sorted out." Vanessa's face lit up with poorly concealed triumph. "That's wonderful, baby. I'll call everyone right away." Throughout the day, people arrived according to plan. Shanice came first, her briefcase bulging with legal documents, her face professionally neutral as she sat up at the dining room table. Jerome followed, laptop under his arm, giving no indication that he'd been monitoring every electronic communication in the house for days. Pat arrived next, her decades of experience visible in how she arranged her files with methodical precision. Derek showed up looking practically giddy, barely containing his excitement as he took his seat. Vanessa fluttered around, serving coffee, playing hostess, while shooting triumphant looks at her co-conspirator. The doorbell rang one final time. Vanessa opened it to find two police detectives standing on the porch. "Mrs. Williams," the first detective said, "we're here to take Mr. Williams's statement about the construction accident. Our investigation has revealed some concerning details about equipment tampering, specifically cut cables and sheared bolts." Vanessa's composure slipped for just a moment before she recovered. "Oh, we were just about to have a business meeting." "Perfect timing," Marcus called from the dining room, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "Please join us, detectives. I think everything we need to discuss is related." Everyone settled around the large dining table. Marcus sat at the head, still maintaining his facade of weakness. Vanessa and Derek exchanged confident glances, clearly believing their moment of victory had arrived. The detectives took out their notebook, pens ready. Marcus looked directly at Derek, his voice quiet but clear. "Before we discuss business, I have some questions about the company finances." Derek shifted in his chair as Marcus opened a thick manila folder, spreading documents across the polished dining room table with deliberate precision. Shanice positioned her phone, recording everything. The detectives leaned forward, their professional curiosity evident in their attentive postures. "Let's start with the vendor payments," Marcus said, his voice steady and clear. All traces of weakness gone. "Specifically, Mountain Ridge Supply Company. Interesting business, Derek. Incorporated 3 years ago, charging us premium rates for materials. He slid several papers forward. Would you like to explain why this company's address is actually a storage unit you rent? Or why the $427,000 in payments we've made to them went directly to your personal account? Derek's face reddened. There's a perfectly reasonable explanation. The explanation, Marcus continued, involves several other fake vendors too. Peterson Contracting, Summit Materials, all shell companies, all traced back to you. He gestured to Pat, who produced more documentation. Every fraudulent charge, every fake invoice, every diverted payment, all meticulously documented. Sweat beaded on Derek's forehead. You're confused, Marcus. The medication. The security cameras in the office weren't confused, Marcus cut in, nodding to Jerome, who turned his laptop screen toward the group. The footage showed Derek and Vanessa in intimate encounters after hours, their conversations clearly recorded by the office's security system. You should have checked for audio features when you disabled the main cameras. The backup system caught everything, including your discussions about taking over my company. Vanessa's perfectly maintained composure cracked slightly. Derek stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. I don't have to listen. Sit down, one detective commanded, moving to block the doorway. We're not finished. Jerome played the recovered text messages through the laptop's speakers. Derek and Vanessa's voices discussing Marcus's accident, planning how to help him along if he didn't cooperate. Derek's face went from red to pale. He looked at Vanessa desperately. She made me do it. This was all her idea. Save it for your lawyer, the second detective said, producing handcuffs. Derek Thompson, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. As the first detective read Derek his rights, Vanessa's sophisticated mask transformed into wide-eyed innocence. Marcus, baby, I had no idea what he was doing. He manipulated me, used me. You have to believe. That might work, Vanessa, Marcus interrupted calmly. Except we're not done. He opened a second folder. Let's discuss the life insurance policy you forged my signature on. The forensics report is quite definitive. It's not my handwriting. Color drained from Vanessa's face as Marcus continued methodically. Or should we talk about Vanessa Richardson? That was your name when Kenneth Richardson died in that suspicious boating accident 5 years ago, right after you convinced him to change his insurance beneficiary during his cancer treatment. His family tried to prove you manipulated him, but you disappeared with the $1.8 million before they could. The detectives were taking rapid notes. Shanice produced more files. We have your pattern documented. 3 other wealthy men before Kenneth. All self-made businessmen. All with substantial assets. All targeted while vulnerable. Marcus lifted his phone, playing the recording from his hospital room. Vanessa's cold voice threatening him, discussing how accidents happen to construction workers. Your browser history makes interesting reading, Jerome added. Lots of searches about medication interactions, undetectable poisons, and staging accidents, all carefully deleted. But cloud backups are wonderful things. Vanessa's mask completely shattered. Her sophisticated demeanor transformed into something feral and angry. You stupid construction worker, you think you're so clever. That's exactly what you got wrong, Marcus said quietly. You thought because I work with my hands, I must be stupid. Because I loved you, I must be weak. You forgot that building something from nothing requires intelligence, patience, and seeing the whole structure before laying the first brick. The second detective moved toward Vanessa with handcuffs. She tried to bolt, but found Pat blocking her path to the kitchen door. As the detective secured the cuffs, Vanessa thrashed and snarled, her cultured accent disappearing entirely. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit murder, the detective stated firmly. As they led her toward the front door, Marcus spoke one final time. 3 days, Vanessa. That's how long you said until my money was yours. Turns out, 3 days was exactly how long I needed to hear everything I needed to destroy you. 18 months later, Marcus stood at the edge of a bustling construction site in West Charlotte, watching as his crew maneuvered steel beams into place. The community center's framework reached toward the clear autumn sky, each level representing another step in his own rebuilding. "Foundation's solid," Pat said, joining him with a stack of permits. At 63, she carried her new partner status with the same no-nonsense efficiency she'd shown for decades. Inspectors signed off this morning. Marcus nodded, studying the plans spread across a makeshift table. The physical therapy after his accident had added muscle to his frame, and months of careful exercise had left him stronger than before. Every morning, he did the strengthening routines that had become habit during recovery, a reminder that what was meant to break him had only made him more resilient. Derek's restitution payment came through, Pat mentioned, shuffling papers. Another garnished check from whatever retail job he's working now. Marcus barely registered the name anymore. His former partner had pled guilty to all charges, lost his contractor's license, and filed bankruptcy to handle the court-ordered repayment. Last Pat heard, Derek was folding clothes at a department store after his wife divorced him and took their house in the settlement. "Put it in the fund," Marcus said. Every dollar Derek repaid went straight to the Kenneth Richardson Memorial Fund, which helped families investigate suspicious deaths and financial manipulation of elderly or ill relatives. It felt right, using the betrayer's money to protect future victims. Shanice's SUV pulled up to the site, his sister looking polished despite the dusty surroundings. She'd been meeting with Kenneth Richardson's family, who'd become passionate advocates after Vanessa's pattern emerged. 3 more victims had come forward after the news coverage, leading to additional charges. Guess what came to the office? Shanice held up a prison envelope, Vanessa's precise handwriting visible on the front. "She's trying again." Marcus shook his head, not even reaching for it. "Same as the others?" "Probably. The usual manipulation. She's changed, she's sorry, she wants forgiveness, she's hoping for letters of support at her parole hearing." Shanice's tone dripped contempt. 15 years was too light. "File it with the others," Marcus said. "Evidence of continued manipulation attempts. The parole board should find it interesting when her time comes." Jerome's car pulled in next to Shanice's. Sunday dinner planning had become a family tradition, though they'd moved it to lunch to accommodate his brother's software company schedule. They joked about being Marcus's board of advisors for life decisions, but the truth was, the betrayal had strengthened their bonds. "Got another family requesting help," Jerome said, joining them. Similar pattern to Kenneth's case. Elderly contractor. Sudden marriage to a much younger woman. Suspicious accident 3 months after she convinced him to change his will. Marcus nodded. "Set up a meeting. We'll pull in the investigator who helped crack Vanessa's pattern." The fund had already helped 3 families get justice, using the expertise they'd developed tracking Vanessa's previous identities and financial manipulation. Kenneth's children were active participants, turning their pain into purpose. A foreman called Marcus over to check some measurements. He moved with easy confidence through the site, reviewing angles and connections with the expertise that Vanessa had mistaken for simplicity. His company had not just survived, but thrived. The story of an owner who fought back against murderous fraud had brought publicity and contracts. "Looking good, Mr. Williams?" one of the younger workers said, gesturing at the rising framework. Marcus had made a point of hiring from the neighborhood, creating job training programs alongside the community center construction. "It's getting there," Marcus agreed, watching steel beams connect perfectly into a structure that would last generations. The project was personal. He'd grown up 3 blocks away, back when his father was teaching him that building something meant building it right. Pat appeared with more paperwork. Reporter called again. "Wants to do a follow-up story about financial predators and warning signs." Says your last interview helped 2 people recognize manipulation attempts before it was too late. Marcus considered it. He'd learned to use his story strategically, sharing details that might help others spot the red flags he'd missed. Vanessa's confident performance, Derek's eager helpfulness, the way they'd both underestimated him because he worked with his hands. The framework rose another level, each beam locked into place with precision. Marcus watched his crew work, seeing the future community center in his mind. A place for job training, financial literacy classes, elder care support groups. Something real, something permanent. A cool breeze carried the scent of approaching rain. Marcus smiled, remembering Vanessa's whispered hospital room threat about construction sites being dangerous. She'd never understood that his work wasn't his weakness. It was his strength. Every building he'd ever created stood as testament to the power of patience, planning, and precise execution. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.